Tom, what are your general takeaways from the debate last night?
My whole thing is I do not want to allow myself to get sucked into the gravitational pull of politics. It's not interesting to me at all, but ideas matter a lot. And so seeing the ideas playing out in this debate, I thought was really jarring from my worldview. So what I'm seeing happen in real time is people trying to convince you that this is a binary political choice. There are two parties. You have to decide between these two people. It's the one word that I kept hearing people say in the post-debate sphere was, well, it's a binary choice. It's a binary choice. It's a binary choice. But I was sitting in the audience at RFK's version of the debate, what they were calling the real debate, that God bless Elon Musk for running the risk of getting sued by CNN for live broadcasting what they were doing and giving him a chance to answer. I'm not on anybody's team for this other than the people who are going to be impacted by the ideas that this country or any country gets behind. And so I am dizzied by the fact that people are letting the political apparatus hand them a frame of reference that simply is not true.
What's the logic to keep RFK off the stage?
To control the frame of reference through which people look at this. So you have the political apparatus wants you to choose between Trump or Biden, and they created, from my perspective, what looks like a structure for the debate that really pitches to the weaknesses of both parties. And so to get those two on a debate stage together, to make sure that they don't get the third party candidate, to make sure that the voting public feels like, oh, well, these are two terrible choices, but these are the only choices that we have. To create that, you had to create really short form answers so that Trump could seem normal and Biden could seem cognizant. And if you had put RFK on the stage with him, it would have changed the dynamic so dramatically as to completely blow apart what felt like a controlled frame of reference that they want the public to have. So sitting in the audience listening to RFK answer, the tenor was so starkly different in that he is somebody that's trying not to come in and be divisive. So you have two people, Trump and Biden, arguing about which one of them was a better president, which one was worse. He's a bad guy, I'm a good guy. I mean, they were both saying stuff. At one point, I was legitimately just bored. And if you let the dynamic that RFK would bring, which is far more policy-based, you're going to feel that differential. You're going to feel viscerally as the audience what it's like to think about the ideas versus thinking about it being a referendum on the person.
And that's probably the same reason the rules have changed this year, right?
I don't know. I don't pay attention to politics is the honest answer. So for my entire life, all I did was put my head down and build businesses. And as I stepped in front of a camera 8 years ago, I really started to think about being able to articulate things that I understood intuitively about growing, scaling a business, leading people, creating things. And that has led me to this idea that I'm trying to get across that I've said many times I want on my tombstone, which is you're having a biological experience. And so I come at these debates not with some grand historical political perspective. I come to these debates understanding how the human mind works and looking at the political machinery, trying to leverage the way the human mind works against people to think that their choices are limited so that they can be controlled. And I hate how conspiratorial that sounds, but it actually is true. It is true. Even now, as I'm talking to you, I'm trying to control your frame of reference. I practiced before I stepped in front of this camera. What is the lens through which I'm going to look at this whole thing so that I can put a headline and thumbnail on the video? Because if I don't, the algorithm isn't going to pick up this video. Everybody is doing this all the time. And so that's the reality. The debate is going to be a structure based on how they're trying to control your frame of reference, but that will have always been true.
Do you think it's best for the American people to have a no policy debate?
That seems ridiculous to me. The only thing I want to hear people talk about are the ideas. So if I'm going to ask myself to evaluate the candidates, if I'm going to put forth a way that I hope you guys will evaluate candidates, it is very simple. Ideas matter. everybody lives their life through a frame of reference. The very things that we see are determined not by what we look at, they're determined by our frame of reference. I refer to frame of reference as whole life beer goggles. They are wild distortions to what is really there that are based on your beliefs, your values, your biology, because there is a tremendous amount of us that is hardwired. Let's call it 50%. That seems to be what science indicates, is 50% of us is hardwired. So you put all of that together, and what you look at becomes somewhat irrelevant, but your frame of reference is going to make sure that you see a certain thing. So this stat has always terrified me. Humans are only able to perceive 0.00035% of the electromagnetic spectrum. That means the thing that you think of as being everything is less than half of 1%. So we then interpret it and assume that we're seeing everything, but that just isn't the reality. So once you understand we are all in the grips of a set of ideas, you understand this is why people say that politics is downstream of culture. Culture is just a cool way of saying the way that we package ideas. Could be a song, could be a movie, could be the debate over minimum wage, but all of that ball that we call culture is transmitting ideas. Those ideas shape, again, not what we look at, but what we see.
So should we be worried that politics is turning into what magicians call a force? Like, where do you nudge people to pick one of the few cards, like the Ace of Spades or Queen of Hearts?
Okay, so magic has this concept that I think is really cool called a force, where you can actually get somebody to pick a card through sleight of hand that you want them to pick. They believe that they are choosing via free will, but in reality, you have dramatically increased the odds that they will pick a very specific card. If you don't believe me, just type in magician's force or magician's classic force into YouTube. You will get all kinds of videos that show you exactly how this is done. So all of life is that. And I wish that I could say that any of us are above that. But the reality is that your brain is telling you what not to pay attention to. There is a reason that you only see less than 0.5% of the electromagnetic spectrum, because if you tried to decipher reality by going, there are X number of photons falling on my left shoulder in a given spectrum and trying to figure out then what the thing is that that shape makes, you'd never be able to get anywhere. So you just look at my shoulder and you go, that t-shirt is black. That's it. Your brain is a heuristic engine. So what I really try to remind myself of is to not get sucked into the center of the political debate, but instead to step back and look at how everything is a simplification. Everything is misdirection. Everything is trying to get you to focus on what they want you to focus on. And so that terrifies me, because you can tell a lie in public forcefully. You could even say, I know this is a lie, and it will still work, because you're now getting people to debate the lie instead of debating that this is a binary choice, when it's not. It should be a debate of ideas. And if the political machinery were to become less dysfunctional, it would have to become about the ideas. Now, you have to limit the field, so I get it. I get why you don't let anybody up on the debate stage. But to not have the third-party candidate up on the debate stage so that people can hear all of these ideas clashing into each other so they can decide what the best ideas are, instead of just picking one person, which again is just a way of narrowing the field.
So should we be worried about this, like on an existential threat level? I mean, this isn't democracy anymore, right?
Okay, so the reality is nothing is ever as bad as you fear it's going to be, and nothing is ever as good as you hope it's going to be in the acute moments. Now, in long arcs, things can get more terrifying than I think people realize. And so there is a moment at which something truly becomes existential. I highly encourage people to read. There are 3 books that have wildly influenced my frame of reference. And that is the Gulag Archipelago, The Rise and Fall of the Third Reich, and Mao, The Unknown Story. It is shocking how wrong things can go when a populace gets in the grips of what I'll call the big lie, where you just start out of fear lying about everything. And it is terrifying that you can scare people enough that they will lie just to keep themselves and others safe. I think that's a completely natural human reaction. And as we go farther and farther down the slope of the big lie, I think that it could truly get existential. But I also think it is incredibly important to remind yourself that right now, if you live in the Western world, the odds that when you step outside, it's beautiful, man. That your life is full of people that you love, that you can get on with your life. At the end of this video, I'm gonna go do amazing things with amazing people, and it is really awesome. And to lose sight of that frame of reference is a way to spin yourself out of control, to lose sight of something that is objectively real, which is that life is full of beauty and wonderment and joy and connection and passion. All of those things are also real. This is why you have to resist the pull of somebody trying to yank you into this is an existential threat, this is an existential threat to democracy, et cetera, et cetera. Step back and say, every day I'm choosing to be in the grips of certain ideas. What ideas do I want to be in the grips of? If one of the ideas that you are not in the grips of is that love is real, and love is beautiful, and love is wonderful, and love is right here if I choose to look at it and I choose to see it, you're in trouble. If you also choose to blind yourself to the fact that if you lie, accept the lies of others, that does lead down a slippery slope, you are also in trouble. But you don't want to be myopically focused on either. The game is to resist somebody else's frame.
But you can't believe that there are not consequences to bad ideas winning, and right now politics is filled with them.
Yes, that's true. Life is full of bad ideas nonstop, morning, noon, and night. That's why I'm exceedingly grateful to be living in a time now where you can access YouTube. I was very glad that Elon Musk bought Twitter. I think it is exceptionally important that people fight for the First Amendment so that ideas can be heard, so that people can make up their own mind about those ideas. I think it is extremely dangerous from second and third order consequences to be paternalistic and to think, I'm gonna go think for people. I think it is simply true that some people do not have the intellect to process through ideas well, but I think it is also true that when you try to put ideas down people's throats from the top down, that is tyrannical. Now, I have a frame of reference, and I'll try to confess it whenever I can. My frame of reference is that top-down tyranny is as bad as it gets, and that we really do have to accept that there are going to be people that we believe are looking at the same data that we're looking at and drawing terrifyingly bad conclusions that are extraordinarily dangerous. And even in that moment, we have to keep the ideas front and center. We have to let them be debated. We have to let people say what they believe to be true. And that the First Amendment ultimately is about allowing people to say things that you absolutely despise and that, quite frankly, you think are dangerous. Now, I'm not a free speech absolutist. I do believe there should be lines. I think that the US Supreme Court has already addressed this. I'm perfectly happy with where they've drawn the lines. But ultimately, people should live in the greatest fear of people not being able to say what they believe to be true. And I think that the reason that we're now living in the age of conspiracy is during the COVID period, more than any other time, certainly that I've been alive, people, even hyper credible people, were told that they weren't allowed to discuss something. And that's the dangerous idea that I think leads people into a very troubling space.
So if I just turned 18, how would you coach me on how to navigate these ideas in order to form my own opinions after the debate?
The most important thing that people have to do is answer the question, where am I trying to end up? You have to know what your North Star is. You have to understand the destination you are trying to achieve. And if you're looking at the political realities of electing a president or a local representative or somebody on the school board, first ask yourself, what am I trying to achieve? What ideas do I think yield the best outcomes? So I'll give you an example. For me, the answer is human flourishing. Now, of course, you could have hours-long debate about what that means and how you define it, but you have to have something. So for me, human flourishing is the largest number of people humanly possible being able to achieve fulfillment. Fulfillment, to me, is working very hard to gain a set of skills that matter to you, that allow you to uplift yourself and others. I think that people should have honorable goals, honorable defined as simply as that it elevates not only yourself, but others as well. So that's where I'm trying to get to. Now it's a question of what ideas are likely to allow for the most people to achieve that. And then if we're talking about a political election, which of those people embodies those ideas? And if that person is unable to debate and articulate their ideas, you have a problem. You really do have to hunger to find out where the edges of your own thinking and beliefs are. And one of the biggest mistakes, dear 18-year-old, trying to think your way through all this stuff, that you could make is to build your self-esteem around being right, to think of yourself as better, faster, stronger, smarter. The thing that changed my life and completely dominates how I look at everything in life is that I see myself as the learner. So I've been on stage, 100 times at this point. I've been in front of the camera for thousands of hours. I've done my own podcasts. I've been on other people's podcasts. And very often people will ask you, is there anything off limits? And not once ever have I said that anything is off limits. And that's when I'm on stage and there is literally nowhere to hide. There is no way to edit it. Like, you're there, you are naked and exposed. The reason that I do that is I cannot help but win. Because either I'm going to put forth ideas that I really believe in that will hopefully positively impact other people's lives, or I'm going to find the edges of my own thinking. I'm going to find that place where, ooh, I thought that idea was good. I was actually living in accordance with that idea, but somebody's shown me that actually that idea begins to break down. Because I am obsessed with utility, meaning what ideas, what behaviors, what actions actually lead to my North Star outcome of human flourishing, my own and others. Okay, cool. I actually believe that I can identify the beliefs that will cause the right behaviors that will lead to the right outcomes. Therefore, I want to know where my thinking is going wrong. So if you build your self-esteem around being the learner and you hunger for disconfirming evidence because it will sharpen your thinking, which will then have the knock-on effect of you having better behaviors in your life, then you're going to win. So that frame will serve you incredibly well. It is seemingly very difficult to do because we seem to have a default setting that just wants us to already be good, amazing, awesome, whatever. But man, if you can build your self-esteem around identifying the right answer instead of being right, you will go far.
So from a policy perspective, did you feel like any candidate actually showcased values that align with human flourishing?
Of the people that I saw debate, I have my belief of which one I think makes the most sense. Because I really distrust myself, I don't want to be on a tirade about listen to me and go vote for this person. So what I would rather do, though I will answer that question at the end of this because I hate it when people dodge questions, but first let me lay out what I really hope people take away from me. What I hope you take away from me is a way to think through difficult problems. The reason I say that I distrust myself is because I know that if you selectively damage the area of a human's brain that controls emotions, they will become pathologically incapable of making a decision. Now, I hope you find that as fascinating as I find it, because it begs the question, why? They're normal in every respect. You wouldn't know that this person didn't have emotions until you say, hey, what do you want to have for lunch? And they can break down what they like about fish, why fish would make an amazing choice. They can talk about vegan options and how advantageous that can be. And then when you say, cool, you've laid out some great options, but which one do you want? They can't make a decision. The reason they can't make a decision goes back to this idea of heuristics. One of the most important, commonly used heuristics that humans use is, how do I feel about it? How do I feel about having a fish meal right now? How do I feel about having a vegan meal? How do I feel about this candidate? Now, how you feel about that candidate may have nothing to do with their ability to drive you towards your North Star. You may not have even defined what your North Star is. And so what I want myself to always remember to do, and hopefully this is useful for other people, is I have a North Star. Whether I get to that North Star or not will be guided by my behaviors. My behaviors are completely controlled by my values and my beliefs, which is another way of saying ideas. So ideas are going to govern the positive outcome of my life. So which ideas are going to be the most fruitful? And then you have to construct, and this is why people use heuristics, because this stuff takes time and energy, but you have to construct a very conscious set of values and beliefs. You have to drag them into the light, you have to define them, you have to write them down, you have to be able to articulate them. But if you can, then all of a sudden people can't suck you into their frame because you're like, hold on a second, that does not match my vision of the world, which I've spent a lot of time thinking about mapping out and have proven to myself over time that it leads me to the positive outcome that I'm looking for in my life.
So before you give us your candidate, can you steelman all the candidates thinking the best way you can?
Sure. And I think this is a tremendously useful way to approach the world. You want to be able to steelman people's position in a way that they would recognize. Because when you can articulate their position in a way where they will say, you understand my position perfectly, now when you come at them and say, hey, you just agreed that I understand your position perfectly, and now here's my take, and I say this not because I don't understand your position, I say it because even though I understand it, I disagree with it. Now, when two intelligent, well-meaning people disagree, they have usually either a collision of values or a different base assumption, meaning base assumptions are beliefs about how you believe the world actually is. Values are beliefs about how you believe the world ought to be. So you're colliding on one of those. Abortion, it's a collision of how people believe the world ought to be. Base assumptions is, in politics, it's almost always values, but base assumptions would be around economic things, right? I believe that by printing money, this is modern monetary theory, by printing more money, you can actually keep the economy moving. You can make sure that there's never any depressions ever again. We can always stabilize money by printing. Okay, that is either true or it's not, and it will show up in the data. And the converse of that point would be that printing money creates inflation, and inflation has a whole host of problems. We don't have to get into it in this conversation, but I have some real strong feelings about that. So understanding those two differences. Okay, so here is my breakdown of a steelman of the three different candidates. Biden's position is that the economy was better under him, that he is an honest man that you can trust to tell you the way that things are, that Trump is a pathological liar, that you can't trust anything that's coming out of his mouth, that if you look at how Trump had left him with a terrible economy coming into his time as president, that you understand why the economy is bad now. The economy is bad now because President Trump did incredibly irresponsible things in his term in office, and that Biden is trying to make up for that. He also believes that Trump is an existential threat to democracy, that Trump is, by being a liar and being unethical and being bombastic, that he is heading us in a very dangerous direction in terms of how he would handle foreign conflicts, and that overall he just can't be trusted, and that whether he is elected or not, that he is not going to peacefully transition power. And so he really believes that to save America, we have to keep Trump out of office. Trump, his position is that, hey, everything that I was doing as a businessman, really understanding how to be strong for America, to not let other countries push us around, to not let NATO force us to pay all the bills and reap none of the benefits, that we really have opened ourselves up to just devastating consequences on the international stage by being weak. He believes that Biden is very weak from a foreign perspective, that our adversaries want to take advantage of us. While he doesn't use these words, at least I've never heard it, he has a somewhat realist perspective. So if you know John Mearsheimer, you'll get a sense of what that is. This is in no way me saying that John Mearsheimer agrees with a single word that Trump says, but just to give you that sense of power is a huge part of the political game, and that if you are not strong, people are going to take advantage of you, and you really have to project that strength. He believes that he had created an incredible economy by better understanding taxes and how to create tax incentives that get people growing companies and creating opportunities. He understood tariffs better so that he could get other countries to pay their fair share so that we didn't have this insane trade deficit. And so he believes that had it not been for COVID, that he would have been reelected in a landslide because people would have understood how good the economy was. And that Biden is using lawfare to keep him out of office a second time, that he does not believe that Biden believes that he can win in a free and fair election and is therefore trying to rig it with all of this lawfare and just trying to keep Trump down and mired in all this litigation. RFK has a different frame of reference, which is he does not want to be divisive. He very much wants to focus on the issues. He believes that there are a handful of issues that both Biden and Trump have made catastrophic errors on, namely economics. So you've got both Trump and Biden having printed just astonishingly unprecedented amounts of money, that is going to create an economic cascade that will devastate not only the current generation, but future generations even more, that we are bankrupting our country through debt, and that's going to create very dramatic problems with the things that we owe people in terms of Medicare, Medicaid, the social services that we have for people. He is very focused on the things that we need to do to win back moral authority on the international stage. And also just believes that the great threat to democracy is not letting all ideas be heard, and has talked very passionately about how hard people have worked to keep him off of the stage, to stop people from hearing his ideas. Now, I think that all three of those candidates would recognize, while a very truncated version of what they stand for, that is my sincere attempt to represent their views in a way that they would all agree with.
Okay, so here are some rapid fire questions, and try to keep the answers.
Now, do you want to let me get away with not telling you which ideas I think are best? Because I still have dodged that question, which I'm perfectly happy to keep doing. No, I hate it when people dodge questions. So I will say very concisely that I have seen a Trump presidency, I have seen a Biden presidency, and I would like to see something new.
Okay, rapid fire questions, and try to keep the answers as short as possible.
My forte.
Who had the best soundbite after the debate?
RFK.
Which candidate should be the most worried?
Biden.
Will we be in a world war in the next 2 years?
No.
Has your view of CNN changed after this debate?
Yes.
What was the funniest moment?
Oh, God. This is so dark. The funniest moment was when Trump was saying, I don't know what he said there at the end of the sentence, and I don't think he does either. That was the funniest, but like in a dark, dark comedy way. The funniest and the most obnoxious way was when they were arguing about golf swings. That was atrocious. And if you watched the quote unquote real debate with RFK, he had a great zinger that was hilarious, where he said, I really want to be a part of the challenge, meaning the physical golf swing challenge, because needless to say, RFK is in far better shape than either of the other two.
What was the best meme you saw coming from this debate?
When I walked out of the room, I curled into a cocoon and did not look at any memes, so I haven't seen any.
So, and after this debate, have you started looking for international real estate?
Okay, so this is where, it's a funny question, but this is where I will say I really believe in America, and I love America, and I don't think that we are on a slippery slope. There's plenty of time to back out. There's plenty of time to promote good ideas. And so I am very committed to this country. I have no plans to leave the country. Have I thought very seriously about going to a more tax-friendly state? Yes, but that is certainly the businessman in me. I think it's wonderful, and I think Ray Dalio has summed it up the best when he said, Tom, the only thing that matters is how people are with each other. And so I think it's important for us all to remember that people act fundamentally differently online than they do out in the real world. So go out in the real world. There's this Buddhist thing called loving kindness meditation. And it is literally filling your heart with love for other people. Start with people that you know, then spread beyond that to people that you kind of know. Then go beyond that to people that you know in name only. And then you just eventually go beyond that to everybody. And it really does create the sense of expansion inside yourself. You don't feel contracted. You feel expansive. It feels awesome. And I think if people understand, that's just an idea. It's an idea that you're using to manipulate your own brain chemistry. But when you do it, now you suddenly see something very differently when you look out at the world. And so, given my extreme belief in the power of independent media and all these ideas being able to work their way out into the public, if we can get people to just say, hey, when I adopt this idea, I feel better or worse. And when I adopt this idea, I feel better or worse, then hopefully we can steer towards better ideas.
Any final thoughts?
Life's amazing. You have to put time and energy if you want to get better at something. You can control the frame of reference of your own life to ensure that you move towards something positive. Just make sure you know where you want to end up, and then judge every step you make based on whether it took you closer to that end or farther away. If closer, do more of it. If farther away, change. All right, everybody, that is my take on this current moment. If you feel like you are being manipulated by the political machinery, it's because you are. So make sure that you understand the mechanisms by which this works. It's all about ideas. If you step back, formulate your own method of thinking, if you know your own values, you know your beliefs, then you can look at the field of ideas objectively and decide which of those you believe is most likely to lead you to the positive outcome, I hope, that you're looking for. And then we can all stay sane and spread a lot more love and not get into all of the division. If you want to hear me speak on specific topics, be sure to drop it into the feed. Let me know what ideas you want to hear discussed. Until then, my friends, be legendary. Take care. Peace.